Okay, I think we have enough people on the Zoom to start. Good evening, everyone. I'm Assemblywoman Rozic. For those of you who don't know, I represent parts of Flushing, Fresh Meadows, Hillcrest, and Oakland Gardens, Bayside Hills, Douglaston. Thank you all for joining tonight's seminar with Common Cause New York. And my co-host for tonight, Assemblyman Dan Rosenthal. Before we start, I want to just do a couple of ground rules. This is all about democratizing knowledge. We're doing this to help everyone understand ranked choice voting, which, to be honest, I'm still confused about. So we're really here to listen and to learn. If you aren't on mute already, please mute yourselves. Also, feel free, we'd love to see your faces if you want to turn on your video. This is going to be quite interactive. If you have questions along the way, please feel free to chat directly to one of the co-hosts or to myself or Assemblyman Rosenthal. We'll try to get to all of the Q&A at the end. And we are leaving the chat on for now. I will say this is a safe space, and I just want everyone to be here with good intent and keep the comments clean and respectful. And I just wanted to lay that all out there. But now I'm going to turn it over to my co-host, Assemblyman Rosenthal.
Thank you, Nily. Hello, everyone. I'm Assemblyman Daniel Rosenthal. Thank you, Nily and Common Cause for doing this tonight. For those of you who don't know, Common Cause is an organization that works in reforming some government policies and good government. They advocate for campaign finance reform, upholding ethics, and making sure that our democracy is fair and accessible to everyone. Tonight, the person who will be running the presentation is the one and only Susan Lerner, who is the executive director of Common Cause. She joined them back in 2007, and she has advocated for a lot of good reforms over the past several years. Everyone who's ever done any work with Albany knows who she is, and we are really happy to have her tonight, and we really appreciate her doing this. For all those of you who I assume most of you who are on are aware that we thought ranked choice voting was going to start in June, but we have a special election. And we know we've been getting a lot of questions about how it works. So we're really thankful for Susan to be willing to do this tonight and explain the process of ranked choice voting, which is a new exciting system that we are getting in New York City. Susan?
Well, thank you so very much to Assemblymember Rosenthal and Assemblymember Rozic for inviting us to provide this informative session to all of you. We're very excited to be with you and really looking forward to helping Queens voters understand this simple and appealing new way to vote. And I am delighted to be joined today by one of our partners, Rank the Vote NYC, and the education campaign director for Rank the Vote NYC, Sean Dugar, is going to be helping with the PowerPoint and actually doing most of the presenting. Because as I think he will tell you, he's got a substantial background in ranked choice voting. And we at Common Cause, as mentioned, are a group, a grassroots organization that works on ensuring that our government is as effective and our democracy is as vibrant and robust as we all want it to be. So elections is a really important part of what we do. And we are dedicated to ensuring that all voters here in Queens and throughout New York City are familiar with ranked choice voting and are able to enjoy the benefits of using this simple and new to New York style of voting. So with that, we have a PowerPoint presentation to provide some background for you on ranked choice voting. And we are here as Ranked Choice Voting NYC and want to help you become familiar with the system. So I want to give you a quick recap on the upcoming changes to our local elections and a little bit of history about how we got here. In 2009, some of you may recall that there was a very costly but low turnout runoff election for public advocate and for comptroller. And that kicked off a debate among citizens and our elected officials of what could be done to avoid this extraordinary cost when very few voters turned out for the runoff elections. And then City Council member Gail Brewer introduced the first ranked choice voting bill in the City Council, which was an instant runoff bill only for the citywide offices as a response to the feeling that runoffs were really too expensive and not really working for our city. In the ensuing 8 years, there were various bills. That bill was reformed, evolved when Council member Brewer left the City Council to become the Manhattan Borough President. Council member Brad Lander picked up the bill, and it expanded to a full ranked choice voting bill for all city offices, not just a runoff, a substitute runoff for the citywide offices. And way back in 2010, right after that expensive, not very popular runoff election for the public advocate and for the city comptroller, there was a charter revision commission, and the charter revision commission at that time looked at what could be done to avoid the extraordinary cost of the runoff. And they decided that ranked choice voting was an interesting idea, but needed more time to consider it, and there should be more discussion. So as I said, in the ensuing 8 years, always a bill in the council, various hearings, discussions about what to do. And in 2018, as you may recall, the mayor appointed a charter revision commission. It held hearings throughout the city, and there was extensive discussion about ranked choice voting and whether that should be put before the people as part of that charter revision commission, because the whole purpose of that charter revision commission was to look at our voting systems. The charter revision commission ultimately did not put ranked choice voting on the ballot for November 2018, or actually I think it was the middle of the year 2018, but rather said that there were two important issues that required further study, and one of them was ranked choice voting, and urged the upcoming Charter Revision Commission to take a detailed look at ranked choice voting, because at that time we already knew that there was a City Council appointed Charter Revision Commission, which met through most of 2019. And again, more public hearings, more discussions about ranked choice voting, experts brought in from other jurisdictions that have ranked choice voting to explain how it worked, and testimony taken from the public in all 5 boroughs. That Charter Revision Commission, the 2019 Charter Revision Commission, decided to place a proposal for ranked choice voting on the ballot as part of the Charter Revision Commission's charter revisions, which they recommended should be adopted. So in November 2019, the proposal to bring ranked choice voting elections to our city went before the voters, and it passed overwhelmingly. And that provision provides that ranked choice voting would start for all city special and primary elections starting in 2021. So that is right around the corner as we're here in December. So why would we be considering ranked choice voting over this 10-year period at all? The first is because of a happy conjunction of our very admirable campaign finance system and the implementation of term limits. We have seen a large number of candidates who are able to run for city office, particularly when we have open seats, as we do coming up in 2021. And under the current system, there is always a concern that with so many diverse candidates that the vote will be split, and that communities don't have an opportunity to really coalesce around one strong candidate when you have a multiplicity of candidates. So there's the fear of splitting the vote, and that leads to communities trying to limit the number of candidates who run, which is never a positive thing. And then also, because we have so many candidates in these crowded fields, what we see is that 2/3 of the city candidates at the primary level in our current election system win their election in the primary with less than a majority vote. 2/3 with less than a majority vote. And that means that a candidate can win the primary, which often, frankly, is the determinative race for our city, with as little as 20 or 30% of the vote. So that you have elected officials who are not the choice of the majority of voters in their district. And we think that that weakens our democracy. Next slide, please. So what's changing? So starting at the very beginning of January 1, 2021, all local primary and special elections for every single city office, city council, borough president, public advocate, comptroller, and mayor will be ranked choice voting elections. The possibility of expensive runoffs are eliminated, and candidates will need to win with at least 50% plus one of the vote. Voters will now have the option, it's not mandatory, this is your choice. You will have the option to rank up to 5 candidates, including a write-in, if you so choose. And if you as a voter decide, nope, I'm going to vote the way I've always voted, I'm voting for one and no more, you will have the option to do that. We recommend that you empower your vote by ranking, but you do not have to do that. Next slide. So what's really unusual is that we have a special election, as the Assembly member mentioned, coming up very quickly. Voters in Council District 24 will be the first voters in New York City in a while to use ranked choice voting during the upcoming February 2nd, sorry, that's a typo, special election. What I failed to mention is that in the past, there have been ranked choice voting elections in New York City. Some of our older voters may remember when we had elected boards of education, in our city, that those boards of education, local boards of education, were elected with a version of ranked choice voting. And when the boards of education were replaced with the Department of Education, there no longer was a need for those ranked choice voting elections. So what we are going to see in the February 2nd election is an expanded, modernized version of what we've used in the past. For the February 2nd special election, early voting runs from Saturday, January 23rd through Sunday, January 31st. And those will all be ranked choice voting ballots, because the only difference to you, the voter, in the voting process is that your ballot will allow you to rank your preferences. Everything else about the election is the same. And election day, of course, is Tuesday, February 2nd. The polls are open from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. Next slide, please. So what is ranked choice voting? As I said, it is a system which gives you a ballot that allows you to rank the candidates in your order of preference, 1st through 5th, including a write-in. So how do you make that determination? Well, I'd like to point out that we all rank very, very naturally in our everyday lives. If you've taken your family to the ice cream store and they're out of your first favorite, well, then you're going to go to your second favorite. If you're packing for a trip, you're ranking the preferences of your outfits and deciding what to wear, what to take. This is something we all do very naturally. And what's new to us is using that system of ranking to decide how we're going to vote. So your first choice candidate is the candidate that you love. That is the candidate you are passionate about, the candidate that you might donate to, the candidate you're willing to door knock or talk to your friends about, a candidate that under any circumstances, the one you want to win. But ranked choice voting gives you backup candidates. If for some reason your first choice candidate doesn't move forward, you have backups. You have your second choice and your third choice. Your second choice is the candidate you like. If the first choice candidate weren't in the race, second choice is the one that you probably would be voting for. Your third and fourth choices are the candidates whom you like slightly less. They're okay. You're just perhaps not as passionate about them as you are about your first choice. And the fifth choice, should you choose to rank all the way down to 5, is the candidate who's okay with you, and you can stand them. You don't dislike them. You just don't, you're not really passionate about them. So this is a system that allows you in these crowded fields to make distinctions and not to have to choose between candidates who are very similar in their outlook and appealing to you. You're going to be able to rank them with your first choice and the backups 2 through 4. Next slide, please. So why ranked choice voting? Does it give us advantages? We believe it very much does. And we base our conclusions on the way ranked choice voting has played out in other jurisdictions. First of all, we started talking about expensive runoffs in 2009. This system saves money. We do not have to run a runoff election, which is a second election, which often has a very low turnout. I talked about the problem of spoilers when you have a lot of candidates from a community, a lot of candidates that are very similar ideologically or in their position, and they split the vote so that a candidate who doesn't have the positions that you really feel are important is elected. So no spoilers or splitting the vote. And what we've seen in other cities is that it does allow for new voices and perspectives. So it amplifies the benefit that we get from our public financing system by allowing new candidates, first-time candidates, to run an effective campaign. And it builds consensus. Often what we see, particularly in these very crowded fields, if you have candidates who are relatively close ideologically, they have a tendency to try and distinguish themselves on a personal basis rather than a policy basis. And it can get negative, and frankly, it can get nasty. With a ranked choice voting system, as we'll discuss, there is a real cost to going negative on your opponents, because if you're not going to be the voter's number one choice of a candidate, you don't want to make the people who have chosen other candidates as their first choice angry, because if you do, they are not going to rank you as 2 or 3. And the successful candidates under a ranked choice voting system are ones who go out and talk to the maximum number of communities and voters in their district with a message of rank me 1, 2, or 3. And so candidates are discouraged from going negative, and they're encouraged to build alliances among themselves on the basis of ethnicity, on the basis of policy similarities, any way that really makes sense in the particular district. So it has a lot of benefits in terms of the way in which campaigns are improved. And we've seen a lot more information and a lot candidates and campaigns which are focused on policy and less on just trying to tear each other down. And right now, we could use much less negative advertising, I think, in our entire system. Next slide, please. So ranked choice voting, as I've said, is being used in many jurisdictions in our country. There are numerous cities across the country that use ranked choice voting, a number in California, a number in Minnesota, Santa Fe, New Mexico, and now Las Cruces. And the state of Maine uses ranked choice voting for its statewide offices and its congressional representatives. Excuse me. And while this map shows where it is in use in the United States and it's just been adopted by the voters in Alaska in this past general election, interestingly enough, it's also in use internationally. The president of India is elected with the ranked choice voting system. Sri Lanka uses ranked choice voting. Australia, Ireland, numerous other countries have used ranked choice voting for decades. This is not an untried new idea. This is a tried and true reform that allows New York to use the best practices that have been identified by jurisdictions across the country to help us decide how to run our ranked choice voting elections. Oh, and I should also point out that Utah has been using ranked choice voting for quite some time to elect its county representatives. So it's used in a lot of different ways across the country and also used extensively in universities for faculty elections and other determinations by universities. So next slide. So I'm now going to turn it over to my co-presenter, as I mentioned, Sean Dugar, who is our new Rank the Vote NYC Education Program Campaign Director rather. And I'm going to ask Sean to introduce himself, give you a little background about himself, and then turn over to him to how we're going to talk about ranked choice voting.
Thank you so much, Susan, and good evening, everyone. So my name is Sean Dugar. I actually hail from the West Coast, from Oakland, California, where I've been an advocate of ranked choice voting since it was first introduced here in Oakland and Berkeley, as well as have led candidate campaigns under ranked choice voting and have led community education throughout the Bay Area and California for a number of years. So I've experienced ranked choice voting here in the Bay Area since the very beginning, have seen the best practices, have seen how it can help communities expand their voice and ensure their voice is heard, and I'm excited to be working with Common Cause and with Rank the Vote New York. So let's jump in. Susan talked about this a little bit, but starting in 2021, New York City voters will have the option to rank their top 5 candidates in your local and primary special elections. Just to be clear, because we have ranked choice voting doesn't mean you can't vote for just one candidate. It does allow you that option. So why ranked choice voting? Under RCV, or ranked choice voting, voters don't have to worry about wasting their time or their vote, accidentally helping to elect someone who does not support their communities, splitting the vote, or having someone elected with less than a majority. I will speak a little bit louder. Sorry, there is my neighbor drilling next to me. So voter education is a team effort. What we will be doing is working collaboratively, but also independently from the Campaign Finance Board, the Board of Elections, and the City Council, all of which will be doing their own education on ranked choice voting. So let's talk a little bit about how ranked choice voting works. I'm going to give you an example. We'll show a video of how it works, and we'll talk about it a little bit more after that.
Ranked Choice Voting Explained. Dinosaur Edition. Let's vote for who we want at the top of the food chain. The Parasaurolophus, the Brachiosaurus, or T-Rex. In regular voting, whoever gets the most votes wins. But in ranked choice voting, you get to order the candidates.
T-Rex is my favorite, but if it loses, I'd want the Brachiosaurus and then the Parasaurolophus.
Every voter does the same. In this case, no one has a majority. The Parasaurolophus gets eliminated because it has the least amount of first place votes. But now we go to its voters' second choice votes and add them to the Brachiosaurus. T-Rex still has 4 votes, but the Brachiosaurus has 6. Since the Brachiosaurus has more than 50% of the vote, it becomes the ruler of the land before time. Ranked choice voting explained.
So let's talk a little bit more about RCV. So this is a sample of what a ranked choice ballot could look like. It's a Scantron, and it's an easy to use ballot system. So let's practice with parks. Who is the clear first choice amongst these candidates? Which park is your absolute favorite? Maybe the park is close to your house. Maybe it's the one you went to as a kid. It's the park that you're the most passionate about. That's going to be your first choice. Let's say we're voting in a larger election, so let's go through the counting process. Of course, you'll pick your second and third, fourth and fifth choices. So to count the votes, this is the first round. Under ranked choice voting, like any election, if any candidate, or in this case park, passes the threshold of 50% plus 1 of the vote, they win outright. There is no further of a ranking process. But you can see in this case, Central Park came out on top of first place votes with 34%, but didn't quite make it to the 50% plus 1 threshold. So in this case, and in all cases with RCV, the candidate with the lowest amount of votes would be eliminated. In this case, that's the Flushing Meadows Corona Park. So you see in this next slide that all of those people who voted for Flushing Meadows Corona Park as their first place vote will then have the second choices of those people added to the other candidates. So we see here that votes from Flushing Meadows went to Pelham Bay Park, Prospect Park, and Central Park. So in the third round, or in the next round, we see that the 2 parks, again with the least amount of votes, their votes are then dispersed. Their second and third, or fourth and fifth place votes are dispersed to the remaining parks in the election. So with that, we see that although Central Park and Pelham Bay Park both received additional votes from Prospect and Greenbelt voters, that it puts Pelham Bay Park over the 50% plus 1 threshold, with that park coming in at 53%, making it the winner. So this is a mock-up of what your ballot is likely to look like in the 24th Council District.
With fictional candidates and fictional historic parties, just so you know.
Yes. And so you can see where you'll be able to rank your first, second, third, fourth, and fifth candidates. And there is a question in the chat box. If the counting is done by computer, that's why it's a Scantron. So you are circling in the bubble so that the computer can read that.
Right, so everything that we showed you about the vote transfers in the park example, that's all going to happen by a computer transfer, and it happens pretty instantaneously once the votes are in.
Yes. Great. Do you want to take this part?
Yeah, well, I was actually starting to go in that direction, which is, we have shown you the video, we've shown you the parks example, so you have a sense of how the counting is done. But what happens is that the rounds are run after all of the ballots are counted. And the counting rounds don't happen. They only happen if no candidate receives 50% plus one of the first choice votes. And those are the votes that will be tallied when you've got the in-person votes, the election day votes, early votes, affidavits, and absentee votes. So that gap we have between election night and when the absentee ballots start to be counted is still going to be there. RCV has nothing to do with that one way or the other. That is state law regarding how we count our absentee ballots. And while changes to the absentee ballot procedure are being discussed and may happen, right now, we have a minimum of a 7-day gap between election day and when the absentee ballots are first counted. And the round by round vote tallies will be released to the general public so that everybody will be able to see what happened in the various vote transfers. Because what you've got with RCV is you have one vote which transfers between your different choices. If your first choice isn't eliminated in the rounds, then your vote does not transfer to your second choice. Your vote only transfers, and it's one vote that transfers if your first choice candidate is eliminated. So next slide. So what does this mean for election night? Well, just as always, the Board of Elections is going to announce the tallies of all first choice votes on election night. That means all of the early votes and all of the in-person votes on election day. But just as in the primary and in the general this year, we now have a much larger number of absentee ballots, which we've ever had before. And so we're very unlikely to have a close to complete tally on election night. We're going to have to wait, as I said, over that 7-day period until the absentee ballots are counted and added in to the in-person totals, and the affidavit ballots also examined and determined if they should be cast or not. So on election night, you'll know the total number of ballots where a candidate where the ballot was marked for a particular candidate as their number one choice. And you would have to have a very significant winning margin on election night to say with any certainty that the winner of that first round is going to be the winner of all of the rounds. You would have to have a percentage that would be equal to 50 plus one of all of the in-person votes and all of the absentee votes that went out. And if somebody had 50 plus one of that number, then we'd be pretty sure that they would be the winner. But in 85% of the races that we've looked at across the country, the candidate who is the leader in the first round tends to be the winner, is the winner. So it's a smaller percentage where candidates who are in second or third place end up the winner after all of the ranked choice voting rounds. So I'm going to turn it back to Sean.
Great. So why should voters use their ranking? More choice gives you more power. It allows you to ensure that your vote counts not just for the initial candidate, but should your first choice candidate get knocked out, that your voice continues to count and that your vote counts towards the candidate that is elected. Um, you can vote your conscience without worrying about wasting your vote. We all know that sometimes the person that we care about, the candidate we love the most, isn't necessarily the most viable. But this allows you to exercise your right to vote and ensure that you're casting your first place vote for that candidate. Um, and ranking a second, third, or fourth or fifth choice never hurts your preferred candidate. Remember, that second, third, fourth, or fifth choice vote is only counted towards another candidate if your candidate um, does not make it. So if they're eliminated in the process.
So, one of the examples that we like to use that shows why ranked choice voting can be very useful in the election process is to think back to the presidential election of 2000, where you had a very close race, particularly in Florida, if you recall back then, between George W. Bush and Al Gore. And there were approximately 6% of the voters who voted for Ralph Nader. And a lot of people who were Gore supporters were absolutely furious that Nader was in the race. They regarded him as a spoiler. They thought if he wasn't running, that the majority of people who voted for Nader probably would have voted for Gore, and Gore would have been the winner. Well, ranked choice voting addresses that situation. If you think that Ralph Nader is the strongest candidate, you can still vote for Ralph Nader without worrying that a candidate you do not want to see elected actually gets the majority, because you've pulled votes away from a more viable candidate. So people really get tied up, I think, sometimes in these situations where some candidates who are perfectly viable candidates are accused of being spoilers, and ranked choice voting eliminates that concern. And as Sean said, allows you to vote for the candidate you are most passionate about without worrying that you're wasting your vote or splitting the vote so that a candidate you really don't want ends up being the winner.
Yes. So let's talk about how you talk to your neighbors, your friends, your family, your community about ranked choice voting. So we understand that some people are not going to like ranked choice voting at first. Ranked choice voting is a new system, and generally with anything new, there can be folks who aren't comfortable with it. And there's a good chance that a lot of folks don't even know that ranked choice voting is happening in New York City in these upcoming elections. So you want to remind them that ranking is easy and it's something we do throughout our lives, throughout the day. Susan used the example of if you are going to the ice cream parlor and they're out of your favorite flavor. I have a friend who was thinking about if she had to be sheltered in place with one of the Hemsworth brothers, which would it be? Of course, she ended up with Thor as her first choice. Second is to remind folks that this is not a new system. New York has used this in the past, and it's been used in the United States for almost 150 years. And that New York City has the benefit of seeing the best practices in cities across the country, whether it be San Francisco or Oakland, or Santa Fe, or throughout Minnesota. You all are getting the best practices for education to ensure that the voters are educated, that candidates are educated, and that community organizations are educated. And then lastly, you want to bring it back to your family, your friends, your neighbors, and their values, that this really allows them to vote their values versus what they think will be a winning process, or what will be a winning candidate. So let's go over some frequently asked questions. Question number 1, how many candidates do I rank? So you will be able to rank up to 5 candidates. It can be 1 candidate, it can be 5, it can be any in between. Do I have to use all 5 rankings? No, you do not have to use all 5 rankings. Again, they will count whether you're voting for 1 candidate or whether you're voting for all, or you're ranking up to 5.
Can I
rank? Yes.
Sorry. Can I rank a candidate more than once? It really does not help your favorite candidate to rank them more than once. And frankly, we discourage people from doing so because it does not give you the full power that your vote has under ranked choice voting. It's called bullet voting in some places, where you vote for the same candidate over and over again. And it really weakens your vote, because if your chosen candidate is eliminated in the rounds, there is no second, third, or fourth choice to which your vote transfers. And then your vote is what we call exhausted. So we strongly urge voters to take the benefit of the ranking. If you want to vote for only 1 candidate, vote for that candidate as your first choice. It does not help your candidate to rank them more than once. And we would say, really question the candidate who says, oh, you can vote for me over and over again, because either they don't understand ranked choice voting, or they don't want you to have the benefit, the full benefit of the system. Does it hurt my favorite candidate to have a second choice? No, it does not. Your second or third, fourth, or fifth choices only come into play if your first choice is eliminated. So if your first choice makes it all the way through to the final round, the fact that you have second, third, or fourth choices has absolutely no impact on that first candidate. But as we've said, the second, third, and fourth candidates are backup candidates that allow your vote to transfer, giving you more choices and a more powerful voice in the process of elections. Back to you, Sean.
Great. So just to reiterate, we're almost at the end of the presentation, that starting next year, you will have the option to rank your top 5 candidates for mayor, comptroller, public advocate, borough president, and city council. And again, the reason that we like ranked choice voting is it stops voters from wasting their vote, from accidentally helping elect someone who they do not support, from splitting the vote, and from someone being elected with less than a majority. So one of the added benefits to ranked choice voting is a change in the tone of elections. You will see candidates being friendly towards each other. You will see candidates not slinging mud as often, because they want the second and third place votes of the supporters of other candidates. One other benefit you'll see possibly is candidates working together to educate, to share their values, and to support each other. We're going to show you a quick video from a slate of candidates in Oakland.
Hi, I'm Pam Harris.
I'm Nayeli Maxon.
I'm Shane Tao.
We're running for Oakland City Council District 4.
For the past 16 years, this seat has been held by dynamic women.
We are 3 well-qualified candidates for City Council.
We are mothers, public servants, and community leaders.
Pam has 20 years of nonprofit finance experience. She can manage any budget.
Nayeli has worked in the District 4 office. She knows the district's issues inside and out.
Shane has worked for the City Council for 5 years. She has the experience to get results.
We're asking for your support on November 6th.
This is a ranked choice election. Vote for us 1, 2, or 3.
You can learn more about us on our websites. Vote for positive leadership,
collaborative leadership,
women's leadership.
Quite a difference from what we see in advertising here in New York City and in any standard, what we call winner take all elections.
Definitely. So with that,
Hi, I'm Pam Harris.
we are going to open it up to Q&A. I know there have been a lot of questions in the chat box. Susan, do we want to go through some of them?
Yes. So one thing that we've gotten several different questions about how this works regarding party backing. And I want to clarify that in New York City, we are only using ranked choice voting for primaries, which are only one party candidates, right? So all Democratic candidates in one primary, all Republican candidates in one primary, and in special elections where all of the candidates are running on a nonpartisan basis. So you're not pitting parties against each other for our ranked choice voting elections. You are having candidates competing within the same political party. So I hope that helps to clarify, how that makes a difference.
I'll answer another one. So Alethea asked about the education process and how it might further disenfranchise communities. What we've actually found is everyone gets our ranked choice voting once we explain it to them as the process that they go through every day, whether it's them going to an ice cream parlor or it's going to the movies, or when we were able to go to the movies, picking what to watch on Netflix. It's a process that happens every day, and it's something that people get. It's just a matter of us getting to everyone, and utilizing you all as messengers is key to that, ensuring that you're spreading the word about ranked choice voting, and of course, directing people to the Board of Elections or to
campaign
to our website, yes, to our website, rankthevotenyc.org. And then I'll add that it's not as confusing as it sounds. We dove a little bit deeper in on this webinar for you all, but people get it. And we've seen it across the country that they get it on the first try. And it's not as complicated as it may sound.
So when you look at the ranked choice voting ballot, if we were to give you a ranked choice voting ballot in your hand right now and ask you to rank, what we have found is that the vast majority of people know exactly what to do. The complicated part, the more complicated part comes about when you start explaining how the votes are tallied. But from the voter's point of view, tell me your first 5 favorites or your first 3 favorites is something which virtually everybody does, actually without being asked. When you start discussing candidates with your family and friends, chances are you're going to be talking about the one I like the best, the one who actually is a really close choice. Maybe I would vote for them. And here's one who also is good, but there's this that I don't like about them. And then of course, this is the candidate. I'm just not going to vote for that one. That is actually how we talk about candidates among ourselves. Now we're transferring that to the voting process to give our votes more power and to ensure that we choose leaders who have support, a consensus of support from the majority of the district that they represent. So,
you want to answer this one?
Which one?
So if I, as a voter, accidentally skip a ranking, does the next ranking automatically pick up?
two things. One, if you as a voter accidentally skip a ranking and you realize you've done that before you put your ballot in the machine, you can go get another ballot, right? They will give you another 2 ballots if you accidentally skip a ranking and you do want to rank. But if you don't catch that skip before you put your ballot in the machine, yes. What will happen is that the machine will simply go to your next choice and rank that. So let's say you don't rank a second choice, you've ranked a third choice, that third choice. If your first choice is eliminated, the machine will then look, the computer will then look to your third choice. Edward asked, can one ranked candidate see first, second, third? You absolutely can. It will not be rejected by the machine or by the Board of Elections, but you have lost some of the real strength of a ranked choice voting system by choosing to do that. You've disempowered your vote, I guess, is what I would say. But it is not considered an overvote or an undervote. The machine will accept a vote that a ballot that votes for one candidate in all ranks.
There are a number of questions about absentee ballots and how to request those. Susan, do you want to go dive into that for a second?
Absolutely. You request an absentee ballot from the Board of Elections. You can go to vote.nyc. You should be able to request the absentee ballot online. Or you should also be able to request the application for an absentee ballot, and it will be sent to you. But we are now using online voter application, absentee ballot applications in New York City. And you should request your absentee ballot as soon as you know you want to vote absentee, to give the board time to get the absentee ballot to you, to give you time to make your choices and to send it back. The absentee ballots will not go out until sometime later in December or early January. But requesting it now, getting your request in early, is always the best and safest thing to do. And don't wait for the deadline to return your absentee ballot. Return it as soon as you can to be sure that the board gets it and will be able to count it. Okay. Okay.
There's a question about pen versus pencil. You want to use a pen because it's your vote. You want to make sure that it's inked in there, and it is counted by the computer, by the voting system.
Absolutely. There's a question about registration and whether you need to re-register for a special election. You do not need to re-register for a special election. If you are already registered and you can go online to the New York City Board of Elections website to check your registration status, then you're fine. And I think the question also was from somebody who said that they voted in the general election. They are registered. There should be no problem in being able to vote for the special election. And remember, our special elections are nonpartisan. So it doesn't matter what party you have registered under or no party, you are still able to vote in the special election. Okay.
Seth asked, once the last place candidate drops off, is it possible that in the next few rounds, either second choice selections, other second choice selections could bring that candidate back into the running? Unfortunately not. What would happen in that case is, should your second place candidate no longer be in the race, it would move on to your third place vote, and so on. That's why it's important to, at least to me, I always rank my full number of candidates.
So there's a question from Althea, who is concerned about the education process. So I'd like to take a moment to talk about the education that has been underway and the education that is going to be conducted both for CD24, because it is the first ranked choice voting election. So those of you who are voters in CD24, congratulations. I think you're going to get some extra attention in helping you to figure out about ranked choice voting. So we at Common Cause and Rank the Vote NYC have formed a partnership with the Queens Public Library, and we're reaching out to community organizations in CD24 and to elected officials like Assemblymember Rozic and Rosenthal to be sure that we get the word out. We're going to be working with social service agencies to place large print information in different languages about ranked choice voting in food packages, in other communications that go to voters throughout CD24. And the city is going to do a special mailing with information about ranked choice voting. The city is going to have its own informational website. We at Rank the Vote NYC are going to have an informational website. I know we're preparing an animated video to really explain the process of ranked choice voting. I believe the city will have information as well. And there are going to be signs and infographics up in polling places so that voters who haven't heard about it, which by the time we get to February 2nd, I hope will be very few people in your district, will have the information that gives them illustrations of how to fill out the ballot, as well as very clear usability tested instructions on the ballot itself so that voters know how to use the power of this new voting system for their own benefits. So there's going to be quite an extensive education campaign where there will be information in multiple languages and with many different voices helping voters understand this simple change that's coming to our primaries, to our specials, and of course, to our June primary, which I'd like to point out is 7 months away. You in CD24, as I said, are going to get the benefit of early information and a little bit of extra attention. And then you'll be getting the same information as the rest of the city for the remainder of the first half of 2021, while we bring the city up to date on this new way to vote. So there are very well thought out education efforts underway and a lot of outreach to organizations that are active in different communities in order to get the word out. Sean, do you want to talk about some of the educational efforts in the cities that have had ranked choice voting in the past and the sort of satisfaction rates that we've seen among voters in those cities?
Sure. So generally, education campaigns start about 6 to 4 months prior to an election. So we're doing a little bit of an expedited process in CD24, but have the full timeline to educate every voter in New York City prior to the June election. What we've done in the Bay Area ranges from billboards and digital ads to hitting churches and speaking to every congregation, to going to community organizations and hosting community organization meetings, to having the candidates themselves do education about ranked choice voting, which I hope all of the candidates running for office in New York will choose to do. I think personally it's important that if a candidate is speaking to me about the process of voting, that it shows me that they care enough about that process and about the community that they're going to represent. So specifically we've seen the last round of ranked choice voting in the Bay Area that the total number of completed ballots was close to 90%. So you see very few people who undervote or overvote. You see folks really filling out their entire ranked choice ballot and utilizing the entire process. And Susan, one thing you didn't mention is we're going to be hiring people on the ground throughout the city who know their communities, who know the pockets of voters, especially hard to reach voters or those without English as their first language. So we're really going to make a concentrated effort to ensure that we're there talking to voters in their languages, in their native tongue, so that they understand the ranked choice process and are able to completely fill out their ballots.
So Phil, let's see, there's a question from Mark. Is there a software package that a CBO could use to practice ranked choice voting? Great question. We are rebuilding the Rank the Vote NYC website to provide a sample ballot that's interactive, that you can use to practice a ranked choice voting election. And we're in discussions with some companies that provide applications that allow you to run a ranked choice sample election through your phone. And we are planning to run a citywide sample ranked choice voting election in 2021, really to give people an opportunity to try it out before they end up in the voting booth. That might come after the CB24 special election. So apologies there. Here's a very good question from Phil. If an election is very close and a recount is required by regulation or court order, will RCV complicate or delay the recount? No, not in any way. The information that is captured by the scanners comes out in a spreadsheet form that is usable for a recount, whether you have a winner take all race or you have a ranked choice voting race. And in fact, San Francisco has been has just started to look at using what we call risk limiting audits, which are the most sophisticated type of audit to use for ranked choice votes. And there have been ranked choice elections where there have been recounts. It does not complicate or delay the process any more than running a ranked choice voting election would. Adrian asks, how do absentee ballots work? They would work the same way they work currently. You would receive an absentee ballot in the mail or pick one up at the Board of Elections if that's what you choose to do. It comes with instructions on how to fill out your ranked choice ballot. It will tell you to only choose fill in one bubble per column. So if you think back to the sample ballot, which might have gone by pretty quickly, the candidates are listed one after the other on the left side of the ballot, and your choices are a grid across the top of the ballot. So if you fill in a bubble for each column, you're only picking one candidate for that choice. And so the instructions are very clear, telling you only fill in one bubble per column. And then you would fill in as many candidates as you choose to rank. You would put it back in the oath envelope. You would sign and date the oath envelope. You put it in your reply envelope, and you would either drop it off at an early voting or election day polling place or mail it back to the Board of Elections. And then it would go through the normal process of determining whether you're an eligible voter, whether you have properly filled out the oath envelope, and then your ballot would be cast. So it's the normal process. The only thing that is different in any step is that you have choices on the ballot. The ballot allows you to rank. Everything else is the same. Uh,
We got another question from Kevin, and it says in New York City on subsequent counts, if a candidate reaches 50% plus one before all votes are reassigned, is she or he the winner? Yes. And the answer is yes. As soon as someone hits 50% plus one or above, they are the winner.
Yes. There's a question, where does your vote go if you only voted for one person and your candidate is eliminated? It doesn't go anywhere. It's what we call exhausted. And that's why we urge voters, use the ranking system, empower your vote to transfer. If you vote for only one candidate and that candidate is eliminated, your vote has nowhere to transfer. Your vote is exhausted. Your voice is stilled.
Susan, the last question I'm seeing is, in what order will candidates be listed?
Whatever process the board uses currently is exactly the same process that the board will use in listing candidates. So, again, everything is the same as we currently have, except that the ballot gives you the option of ranking candidates according to your preference. From the voter's point of view, nothing else changes. You have to register, you have to vote in person or by absentee. It's just that you're presented with a ballot that gives you more options. You cast it the same way. It goes into the scanner. And the only way it would be rejected is if you overvote. And that is, otherwise, the process is absolutely the same. The rules are the same. The ballot is different, and the computation done by computer is a different process. From the voter's point of view, virtually everything else is the same, but you have more choices. Okay. Okay. No, you don't go to the polls extra times, because with ranked choice voting, you have an instant runoff. So you don't get a runoff. You don't have to go back and vote again. Everything's contained on the one ballot where you rank your choices. And then there's a more general question about why do we wait 7 days to count absentee ballots? Okay. And that has to do with the time which our election law gives our absentee ballots to reach the Board of Elections, so that if the mail is slow and mailed your absentee ballot on or before Election Day, that your ballot will get to the Board of Elections within 7 days and it'll be counted. And ask a question to which, in all honesty, I don't have the answer, but I suspect I know what it is. If the voter only votes for one candidate, but puts that candidate as the fifth choice, what happens? Does the computer automatically shift that vote to first choice? No, I do not believe that they do. What you need to do, if you're voting for one candidate, you need to vote for that candidate as first choice. But I will double check with the people who have developed the tabulation software. But my understanding is you have to vote for a first choice in order to get past number one. If your number one is blank, then the computer has nowhere to go.
And Susan, I think we have one last question from Kevin, which is, will the Board of Elections have computers ready for this special?
Yes. The Board of Elections needs 3 things in order to run a ranked choice voting election. They have to have a ballot that's designed for ranked choice voting. They have had that since February. They need to have optical scanners, the machine that you put your ballot into to read the ballot, that can read the ranked choice voting ballot and put out data that keeps track of the rankings. We own that equipment. It's the equipment we have been using for the last 10 years. We don't have to buy anything new. And it turns out we don't have to make any changes to that equipment in either firmware or software. The most recent version of that machine, which we already own and already use, is set up to read ranked choice voting ballots and to put out the data in ranked choice voting form. The third thing that you need in order to run a ranked choice voting election is you need the software that tabulates the rounds. And the Board of Elections has put out a request, an RFP, to purchase that software. And there are several very good choices that they have who I know are going to be bidding on this RFP to provide the software. And that is basically a plug and play piece of software. And I expect that it will be in place for the February special election. So the three things that the board needs, it's got 2/3 of them in hand for months, if not years. And the third one well on the way to having in time for the February 2nd election. When you think of the changes that we've made to our elections in the last year, a huge switch to hundreds of thousands of people voting early when a year ago we didn't even have early voting, or we just started early voting. When you think of the huge number of absentee ballots that we now use, being able to request our absentee ballots online, we've asked the Board of Elections to make really significant changes to our elections, and with the absentee ballots in 6 weeks' time. Ranked choice voting is actually less of a strain on the board than the changes that we've made and demanded that they do for absentee voting. Most of the heavy lifting is done by the software. We own the machine that reads the ballot, and we're about to purchase the software that tabulates the votes. We're in good shape for ranked choice voting as far as the technology is concerned. And let's see.
And Susan, I think this will be our
Susan, I think we got to wrap up.
Yeah, we do.
But I want to say a really hearty thank you to both Common Cause and Rank the Vote NYC. There were a lot of great questions in the chat tonight, and a lot of people asking for more information. So I'm going to repeat the website. It's rankthevoteny.org. If you are an organization or part of a civic that you want to follow up and maybe do another seminar just for your organization, feel free to reach out to me or Assemblymember Rosenthal's office. Again, this is all about educating voters and getting the information out there so that we are prepped and ready for February 2nd if you live in Council District 24. And if you live in other parts of Queens, you'll be voting via ranked choice vote in June anyway. So get ready for that as well. And with that, I will say thank you all for hanging in there. I know it's almost 7 o'clock and you've got busy lives, but you chose to be here and stuck around, and we appreciate that. And I will turn it over to Assemblyman Rosenthal.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you again for Common Cause and Nily Rozic for putting this together. This will be available on rankthevoteny.org. It was recorded, so please share that. I think myself and Assemblywoman Rozic will also post it on our Facebook and Instagram pages tomorrow, so it is there so everyone can review it and share it to help us in that education process. Thank you all, everyone, again for joining us, and stay safe.
Thank you all, and thanks to the Assembly members.